It's my privilege to introduce you to a leading voice in our community's fight against Alzheimer's and dementia, Dr. Bashir Easter. As the founder of both Melanin Minded LLC and the Melanin Minded Foundation, he's dedicated his career to empowering our community, particularly people of color, with knowledge and training to assist family members in their struggle to care for those suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's. Melanin Minded serves as a vital bridge connecting communities and individuals with vital information, along with the services and support they need to ensure that no one faces these challenges alone. Dr. Easter, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mixon. I look forward to this conversation, and I appreciate you having this talk.
Well, it was great meeting you a few weeks ago. A little backstory for the viewers. You and I attended a gathering of more than 100 Black men that had been pulled together by ALEM. We had the good fortune of sharing a table together, and I learned from you that you were highly motivated to get into this particular career path. Can you talk about what led you to the work you're doing now?
I thank you for that. And as many of us, when we talk about Alzheimer's disease and related dementia, it usually falls in people's lap, which it did for me. It wasn't something that I did as a career path. I have a business background, went to, as we were meeting at MATC, I was at my love of MATC, and continued on to get my bachelor's and then my master's. It was mostly focuses on business or human services. But what happened was my mother was having issues with diabetes. It was to the point where she was not maintaining her A1C, so she started getting ulcers on the bottom of her feet. She was really having those symptoms because she wasn't maintaining what is saying a healthy lifestyle of eating. She was smoking. But at the same time, as those started to progress, her feet became to the point where they were going to have wanted to amputate her leg because of the diabetes. And so what ended up happening was we ended up asking the doctor, can we save her leg? They said, yes, we have to get her A1C under control. But they did to a certain extent, but then had to do surgery on her toes. They did surgery on her toes. And then at 55 years of age, after that surgery, that's when she started having the symptoms of not speaking. The doctor then stated it was the anesthesia at that point. It will wear off that day after, and it did not wear off. And then what ended up happening is we took her back to the doctor. The doctor, this is 18 years ago too, Mr. Mixon, just so we have a clarity of time, took her back into the office. 1 hour later, said my mother has dementia and she can no longer live by herself. And he did not explain about resources, services, supports. He did not explain what dementia was. Me and my sisters looking at each other and was like, well, what kind of pill does she need to take to get better? And so that really started the 6-year journey of us doing it all wrong. I didn't learn about this disease and the prevalence rate and the impact of it on the community until I started working for the Department on Aging. And that was 6 years after my mother just got the dementia diagnosis. But that really what led us me on this journey to figure out what it is, what it isn't, and then how I can help change the community.
There is confusion among many of us about the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's. We use the word Alzheimer's so often, we kind of lump everything together. But that's not really correct, is it?
That's not correct. So dementia is, when you said the diagnosis of dementia, I usually tell everyone to say now is if you say a loved one is died from dementia or living with dementia or diagnosed with dementia, I always now say what type. Because dementia is just an umbrella term of symptoms. And so when they say umbrella term of symptoms, it could be slurring of words, it could be memory, it could be function, it could be all these different things that interfere with your daily life, right? It's severe enough. But there are reversible dementias, and those dementias are if you have a Friday night, you have a good time, Saturday night with friends, and you drink too much or you see someone, those people have dementia symptoms. They slur their words, they're stumbling around, they're not what you say, quote unquote, normal. But when the alcohol dispenses out of their body the next day, they usually have a headache, but they come back to what they say is considered a normal state of mind. We're talking about the type of dementia that actually goes into what we say is Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease, there are actually 72 different types of dementia that are not reversible. And that is where the brain is actually damaged. And once the brain is damaged, what happens is you are looking at the area of the brain that's damaged. It talks about where you are looking at the type. So Alzheimer's disease is the most common. It's actually more of a white matter that is actually on the brain that actually destroys certain cells. Memory is associated with it. But my mother, which we thought she had Alzheimer's disease because it's all we know, actually had frontal temporal. And that way is actually the deterioration of the frontal lobe of the brain would actually start to impact the person's behavior. So when we get to making sure we understand, we ask the type of dementia, we want to know if it's reversible or if it's the type of dementia that is that's situated with those 72 types of dementias we talked about that actually impairs the brain.
And you get dementia by getting knocked in the head if you're a pro football player or you take a fall?
So some of that talks about traumatic brain injury or mild cognitive impairment. That once the brain is damaged, what example you just had was if you take a piece of fruit, right, and you hit it and it falls on the ground, it starts to deteriorate. It does that regenerate. And so they're looking to find out when the brain is actually damaged. It can heal the things around it or reroutes. The issue is like if an individual has a stroke, that is actually blood that actually has now ruptured in the brain, and that area is damaged. And some of your functions may come with a side paralysis, eyes and speech will be impaired, but your body can recover from that. The issue is when we're talking about the brain actually being damaged, like that piece of fruit, where it is those sensors and synapses and those tangles are actually in the brain are now destroyed. That is not going to regenerate. The brain then reroutes to be able to hear and see the person understanding the world around them with these sensors, your tongue, your fingertips, your eyes, your ear. Those are really just sensors going to the brain for your brain to now understand the world that's around them. So you can actually do everything you can, but a lot of times your brain is trying to understand it differently. And then what you see are the behaviors that comes out of that individual.
Are there cognitive tests that can diagnose dementia versus Alzheimer's?
So dementia is just the symptoms, right? So we want to say, you want to look at it as what is the person doing that's causing them to have some type of things that's impairing their activities of daily living. So when I talk about the memory, the slurring of words, your functioning level and all of that, that could be sleep, right? You could get a bad night of sleep and then wake up and feel groggy or having those issues. It could be a medication you're taking that's interaction is wrong. A urinary tract infection could cause these type of issues. But if we're talking about the type, you have to go through some tests, right? Usually the first part of it is trying to do a cognitive test called like the mini cog or the MOCA test. These are where you actually have to be recalling of words, maybe a clock draw that you have to do. Who is the president? Counting backwards and things like that. That is getting the brain to be able to take a series of commands and then it spits out what it's able to understand. That's a baseline of where that person is. Usually then you'll do it another maybe 3 months or 6 months to be able to see if any of those same things that you were asked, have they changed? And you have to understand, we're talking about how the brain functions, not the person, how the brain is now interpreting instructions and how it actually reacts. And then they actually do an MRI. They actually do a scan of the brain to be able to see if is there any damage, anything that is considered starting to shrinkage, holes. Like I also talk about the white matter that's on the brain. So there are batteries of tests that they do. They are now looking to do blood testing. They're going down to see the blood testing to see if there is either a APOE gene, amyloid fluid that is actually built up in the brain as well that they're looking at. So they are having some advances to try to figure out what is or isn't in regards to the type of dementia the individual actually has. And that is very needed, not only for the people who are living with it, but the caregivers that are going to provide this care for that family.
Now, when you and I sat next to each other at the event, you clued me in on your focus on the caregivers.
Yes.
And you talk about what services you provide caregivers.
Absolutely. So caregiving is number one. When we talk about African Americans are 2 times higher to be impacted by this disease, and our Latin Americans is 1.5 times higher. That's when we talk about those startling numbers. And we talk about this number is going to grow as we talk about the baby boomer generation was the largest group, and in that they are now it's almost like a tsunami of this actually impacting the community. Well, as you have those individuals that are living with the disease, the family, which are as usually the first people that are providing that care, our family, husband and wives, sons and daughters, nieces and nephews, are providing this care. And those caregivers have no clue what to do. Like I said, when that doctor didn't give us the information or told us about resources or connected us to supports those 18 years ago, we struggled because we were trying to do it like it was normal aging. We kept seeing the person, which was our mother, but her things that she was doing was just odd. We didn't understand this was a change in brain. Whereas a caregiver, by taking care of an adult, a matriarch or patriarch, we're looking at that person of how they used to be and still wanting them to be that way. But they're changing of the brain. They can't understand, why is this person now putting the milk in the cabinet? Why they're not can't remember any of the names, or they're calling someone that they have seen years ago, or thinking that someone who's passed is still here in the future, and they're looking for or want to go home somewhere they lived 20 years ago. The caregiver having to adjust to that, it gets to the point where they become burdensome. And that burden is not a caregiver of love, it's now a caregiver of struggle, of strife, because this is hard. This is the hardest disease to do. So we focus our services to empower and equip the individual. So the mission of Melanin Mind is to be the bridge for information services and supports for people of color. And the vision is to empower and equip people of color to have the ultimate quality of life. And the focus of it right now is the Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. So our caregiver, we don't build them up and give them everything they need to walk this journey, they will go down, and the person that they're loving and caring for will go down as well. And so we want to make sure that we flood them with it, which is something that we'll focus on underrepresented populations and underserved populations, since they're the hardest hit.
How do people in our community find Melanin Minded and get help?
Absolutely. So there's about 4 things that we do in services that goes into how we want to connect. So the first service that we focus on is called Navigator Coaching. Navigator Coaching is, instead of we giving you a brochure or you having to call a certain number, we walk you through the process of what to do from step to step in caring for your loved one, from advanced directives to getting them a diagnosis, to then teaching the family about the diagnosis, how to provide care. And then we have a support group for men and women that we meet online to help them in that process. The second thing we do is we have a service for youth. It's called the Bridge Youth Program. We actually train those youth to actually get it, because they're considered the invisible caregiver. That's how I got my doctorate. It's focusing on those youth and their experiences. And it was very unique to hear about their experiences providing care. So we train them. We actually pay them that they go through this training. And with the training that they receive, they could be either hired on to some of the local healthcare agencies, or we bring them on to Melanin Minded to help them in the process of do a train-the-trainer model. And then also create an awareness to the youth that they have a voice as well. Then the other entryway of services is we have the Navigator Transportation. It's called My Melanin Nav. It's the first dementia-capable rideshare service that we actually did a full pilot for 160 rides in Milwaukee that gets people back in the community that are with the early stages of the disease, seniors, and people with limited disabilities back into the community that they stepped away from, to help build this dementia-capable, dementia-friendly community. And then the last part of it, Mr. Mixon, is we focus on the men. So I was a caregiver for my mother. And a lot of it, as I saw in research, that men are really not recognized for the care that they do. It's usually for a spouse, not for other family members. So we as men have our own unique issues with our health. And so it's men making health a priority, but also focusing on providing care. So usually they can reach out to me by email or by my phone, 414-234-8160, or just go to melaninmindedllc.com, right on the website, and all our information is there as well.
Now, in our community, traditionally, there has often been a reluctance to admit to a certain medical condition, whether it's symptoms to something as harsh as cancer, or a suspicion that we have dementia, or our mother or our father has an illness. Do you recommend any kind of baseline testing? What is the first thing a family member should consider if they think that they're drifting in this direction with another member?
Mr. Mixon, this is one of the biggest things that's been plaguing the African American and Latino community. It's focused on, with this disease, no one wants to talk about it. Culture and denial is one of the biggest issues in regards to this disease, but it's not just only the community's fault. It's also the bringing the awareness to the community. So I have to say that. I did an algorithm on Google, just on the algorithm. Remember I gave you those numbers of 2 times higher African Americans, 1.5 of Latin Americans, while Google Caucasian celebrities with the disease, and it just flooded. I could see them all from Ronald Reagan. I saw them from Bruce Willis, most noticeable recently. It just kept going. So I Googled African American celebrities impacted by Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. One person. I Googled Latin American, and zero came up. So even that was not even noticed in the numbers I gave you, recognized it. So that lead said we need to lean in. We don't want the disease, but we do need to lean in because we are living with it and usually at the bottom and mostly in crisis, knowing that there's a lot of resources and services that are out there. So when some individual starts to notice something going on with their loved one, they're not attributing it to Alzheimer's or dementia. And you really should not focus it on the type. You are probably having dementia symptoms, but you need to go to the doctor to find out, is it reversible or is it a dementia type? Going to the doctor, you might find out it's just a urinary tract infection. You might find out that you might have a thyroid issue. We need to find out what it is first. But if it is something that we go through those tests, usually your primary doctor will do your mini mental maybe, but generally you need to go and have a referral, especially if you're someone that is getting older, right? As someone older generation, you want to go to a gerontologist. You want to have a geriatrics. You want that type of doctor to go through the process because they understand someone that is 50 and up. And understanding that is those are where you're understanding how the cognitive test needs to be ran, the MRI that needs to be done. But usually what's happening is we shoot it all to I'm not sure what it is. And that person that is living with, they know some changes that's going on with them, but they're not going to the doctor to have them check for this disease because the stigma is still too thick. We have to bring it to understanding this is the reality. And what right now, African Americans are not leaning into it because a lot of times they think they can pray it away or it's just going to get better instead of realizing that there's other issues that's going on with you. So usually the first thing is to go to the doctor, find out what else is happening with you. Is it your high blood pressure? Is it diabetes? Is it healthy heart, healthy brain, healthy stomach, healthy brain? And then start processing what other things are stopping this person to have a quality of life, if it's driving or just cooking, stuff like that. Those are things we should start off with. But we need to lean into this and then have a conversation with someone like myself or other entities that are able to help you in this process.
A bit of a side street to this discussion. Do you have research or information about people with dementia interacting with officialdom, interacting with police, interacting with DMV? And are there people in those organizations that are trained to recognize these problems and offer any assistance at all?
So that's why we're trying to build this dementia-friendly community. We are looking to have a community where individuals are able to live in a community. I call it like let them bowl. And that doesn't mean we stop them from going to the grocery stores or barber shops or to any other connections. We really want them to be able to bowl. We just put the bumpers up so they can bowl and live in this society. Usually if someone is connected to, we'll say the police in regards to that, the silver alerts that go out?
Yes.
Those silver alerts are usually someone of a senior age that is driving and now has gotten lost because of whatever reason that's happening to them medically. They're now getting lost and those silver alerts go out. If someone goes to a home, someone is saying someone is acting erratic or they are wandering, that's where you're seeing that interaction with the police and EMTs. And generally, we're trying to be able to actually, interesting enough, a lot of the EMTs don't know how to deal with the mental illness or someone with the Alzheimer's or dementia because it's like, what do we do? You're not giving them a pill. You're not just going to give them a sedative. The first thing they do is they take them to the doctor, take them to the hospital, which is most important because we need to find out what's going on with that person. That's usually the best thing that person of that from EMTs, police, and all that can do is to get them to the hospital first. Once you get to the hospital, now the batteries of test needs to happen. When we're looking at an individual who is just out in the community, and then you're noticing that they are connected to officer, police officers, firemen, or just someone generally, the DMV was the part where we got the numbers for us to actually do the navigator transportation. In 2020, about 400 licenses were revoked because of mild cognitive impairment. People were having dementia systems. The thing about the DMV, they just have the numbers, but they are just suggesting what can they do. Somebody has to alter their transportation for them. That was another reason why we started the transportation service. So the biggest thing we usually tell, because I used to be an elder abuse investigator, When that happens, get them to the hospital. Get them to the hospital. Once they get to the hospital, that hospital systems can do a lot of things. And a lot of things that they need to do is the support from family. So that's usually what we do, is try to build the family up to prepare what they need to do next with the individual that's coming out of that hospital.
Now, you mentioned to me that you're based in Milwaukee, but you're also branching into Illinois and perhaps other states. Tell me about that.
Yes, Mr. Mixon. So the thing about us in this pilot, Milwaukee, this is the first of its kind. I know it's kind of hard to hear in 2024, first of kind items, but the services that we're providing are first of its kind. It is a model that we're looking to build, and as we're building that model for other cities and states to see, they are recognizing that, hey, we want this here in our community as well. So Milwaukee being the first in doing the navigated transportation, the bridge youth, and we're not the first to build a dementia-friendly community. That really came out of the UK. It started moving into the States. But we're the first in focusing on underserved and underrepresented populations coming from the churches. We're working on 10 churches to help us into doing that. They're getting training from Dr. Fayron Epps using the altar program that's going to happen in the church. And then we have 7 businesses that we're going to be training to be dementia capable, dementia friendly. And then we're going to be building those entities to say that this is what a model looks like in those areas that are hit the hardest. Now, Dallas, they actually see that the Texas area has seen this and said, you know what, we see the work that Dr. Easter is doing. We want to bring that here. So we're looking at to do a pilot. That's we have to enter in these communities in the Texas area. And it looks like it's going to be 3 different areas to do the pilot, starting with the navigated transportation. And then Atlanta is also looking at it as well. So we're expanding it. We're trying to work with the existing infrastructure and just bringing these nuances in to be able to expand the services and support that all these other agencies have as well, and just concentrated it into the community.
That is really terrific that you're growing. And I want you once more to repeat how to contact Melanin Minded. What's your phone number, your web address?
Yes, my phone number is going to be 414-234-8160. And you can use a text as well as call me in that number to be able to give connects. And if you want to see the work being done, go to melaninmindedllc.com. That's melaninmindedllc.com to be able to look at any of those services and work and the events that we are having. And then also we have a radio show that's on the 4th Thursdays on WNOV 860. It's called Their Legacy. And I do this with Chanel Snowden as well as Sandy Montez Gruber are the hosts on the Keith Perry Show, to be able to talk about this dementia-friendly community push, but also talk about the resources that are available right now to help reduce this stigma and provide services immediately.
Dr. Bashir Easter, Melanin Minded, thank you so much for your input today.
Thank you, Mr. Mixon. I appreciate your time.
Take care.